What is going on, guys? Winner Kills here, and welcome to episode 4 of One Deck 1 Month featuring Rikka, and what will probably be the last One Deck 1 Month episode for a while. I'll elaborate a little bit more on that later, but first we have some things to talk about. I did touch on this briefly at the end of last week's episode where I said I was not able to get in as much testing as I would have liked to this past week, primarily because Dueling Book was down for a couple days. Like, you just outright couldn't get on the site, and before that the site was extremely laggy, and I had entered in an online tournament that was post Darkwing Blast, hosted by my friend Dalen, aka Mr. Top 16. Shoutouts to him. And again, this was a post Darkwing Blast format, and I was going to use this as an opportunity to get some testing in that format since I had previously had none and currently still don't have any. Didn't go to locals on Tuesday because it wasn't going to be Darkwing Blast format, as the set was not officially legal yet. And today, Saturday, is the first tournament of the series where the set will be legal. Now, really quickly, looking at the deck list here, I actually did want to make some changes. I know also at the end of last episode, I said I really didn't want to make any changes. But after seeing how Nibiru-proof tier has quickly become, not only with the help of Baron to Floor access now, but also with the help of Rule Kalos on top of that, Nibiru has become seemingly worse. I almost value more cards like Effect Veiler and Ghost Mourner and Moonlit Chill over those cards instead of something like Nibiru, because Nibiru is a hand trap this format that only carries weight if it is paired with another hand trap like Veiler or Imperm or Mourner. And I just, with the hand trap count that we're playing, I don't think it makes sense to play something like Nibiru in the main deck. It just really doesn't. We do have a 53% chance of seeing 2 or more, and it's a good number. Don't get me wrong, it's definitely a good number to be at, but if we could go up to like 16, 17 hand traps in the main deck, I would definitely feel a little bit more confident. But I think my meta call for today, and it could be an incorrect call, I am going to take out the Nibirus and put in 2 copies of Effect Veiler and Ghost Mourner and Moonlit Chill. The reason I'm putting Mourner in is so we have some way to have like another hand trap live as a 6th card. That was kind of also another pitfall of Nibiru 2. It is never live as a 6th card unless you're playing against like Tri Brigade, I guess, which is an off chance because they'll probably have Appaloosa up. But either way, I digress. It's another hand trap that's live as the 6th card, which can be pretty important going against tier decks where they're going to be summoning Dragostapelias, Rule Kalos, and things like Rhino Heart, or Kaleido Heart rather. So I feel like if we want to, be competitive and have an edge, we should be playing something like Mourner. Should I be playing at more than 1 copy? I don't know. I think 2 Veiler, 3 Imperm, and a Mourner is going to be enough. 3 Crow and a Bell is also good, and 3 Ash is just 3 Ash. I did think about changing the side deck a little bit by putting in Talents and Call By to the side, but I feel like we have enough going first cards as is in the form of Judgment and Rivalry. Those cards are going to go insane. And we also still have Dark Ruler in the side deck for these big boards if we need more firepower going into them, because I did hear that Brandon High Spirits with a tier limit name is Baron plus Rule Kalos, and I think a Soliac on top of that. I could be wrong, or tier limit Scream, which is also a really insane card. Read it if you haven't already. I know I'm going to read over it a couple more times before I leave, because like, again, like a lot of the cards this tier deck got is just like insane. Like the amount of support it got is just like absolutely unwarranted in my opinion. Like the deck was already so good, and now it's just like leaps and bounds better. And not to mention Magnificent Mavens is going to be dropping an absolute bomb come early November. Which I talked about again at the end of the last episode. So as it stands, this is what our deck list is going to look like for tonight. I'm locking it in. I would take some more time to try to fine tune it, but as it stands, I just don't really have the time right now because I'm supposed to be meeting a friend of mine at locals a little bit early, who I'm actually selling my English Marincess core to. Shoutouts to Mr. Fields, becoming a fellow marinara sauce duelist. Don't worry, I will be keeping my Marincess deck as I have it all in French. Still waiting on some French cards in the mail from my man Dragon5 in Discord. Huge shout outs to him. And normally in the last week, I have some kind of like upgrade to the deck rarity wise. So I will say this now, I did get my hands on a champion pack Lone Fire Would to have loved to have it in this series because it's an absolutely iconic card, and Lone Fire is probably one of my favorite cards in this deck. So really wish I would have had it in time to show it off to you guys, but it is what it is. At least you guys know about it. And yeah, time to go ahead and get ready for locals. We don't have a lot of time. Again, I got to get there a little bit earlier today to help them get the cards early enough to be able to build the whole deck before the tournament starts. So I don't want to drop the ball on that front. So yeah, I don't want to say we're winging it, but we're about as close to winging it as you can get without actually winging it, if that makes any sense.
See what happens.
Card Loki, not bad. Only good super rare in the entire set.
Tonight, right? Playing tonight?
All right, everybody, welcome to round 2, where we ended up playing against Runic Sprite, a matchup that I know a lot of you guys have been wanting to see me go over. This match was also uploaded in its entirety on the Saturday Night Local series, which went up a few weeks back. So if you guys want to see that one, check it out at the link up in the top right. And the reason I point out specifically the full match is because what I have here from this angle, I do not have the full match, unfortunately. I was not able to record Game 3 because my camera died at the start of it. It's fine, though. Really not too much to say about Game 3, as it was kind of a blowout, and we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail when we get to it. Now, this matchup, I feel, in my personal opinion, tends to be very tough because the Runic engine is an engine that the Rikka cards have a very hard time interacting with. And what I mean by that is the deck doesn't really put out any Omni Negates. It can get access to Hyperion with a Spell Negate, which can help deal with Runic Fountain, but again, only on their turn. And the only other way the Rikka deck has a chance to interact with spells and traps is just by, I'll say, the Sylvan High Protector, which, as many of you know who play this deck, yes, it can be a way to interact with spells and traps, but it is not the greatest way to do it. It's not a quick effect. You can't do it during the opponent's turn, and it doesn't really truly get rid of the cards. It just puts them back into the deck. And having to play through a barrage of monster removal and spell trap removal that the Runic engine has, it just makes it so much more of a nightmare to try to beat it. And on top of that, trying to combat the Sprite cards, that can also be very difficult. Things like Smasher and Double Cross can outright just end our turn on normal Summon Petal or Loci, depending on the given hand. We did play against a pure Runic deck the week prior. That went a little bit more smooth, mainly because I think we got a little lucky, especially in Game 2 with how well we opened and how poorly our opponent opened. But let's take a look at this match nonetheless here. So I believe I do lose the die roll, which is not how we want things to start here. Not at all. My opponent does go first. Obviously, he leads with Runic Destruction to go ahead and bring out the Huggin, and then he activates Huggin's effect, and I believe he discards Lava Golem as well. And the moment I saw the Lava Golem get discarded, I was like, okay, that's free information for us. That's going to be good to know, especially when we want to build our board in, you know, any game past Game 1. We have to keep Lava Golem in mind. He's going to normal summon that Soul Scissors card, which is a new card that came out in Darkwing Blast that just has basically a free pop if it's brought out off of Elf. And he's just going to go ahead and do standard Sprite plays here through Gigantic, going into Elf. Elf will go ahead and bring back the blue. and then he's going to go ahead and overlay into Djinn Buster with red and a set and pass turn. So we have to deal with red Djinn Buster. What is most likely could be a set Smashers or any sort of runic card. You know, we kind of have to deal with that with quite a bit of interruptions. I think my opening hand was not like the greatest. We do have to start normal summon Seed, which is not my preferred way to start any given combo, but you know, if we have to, we have to, right? So we do link into the Dryas. He does end up using the Elf here to bring back Soul Scissors, and if it's summoned from the graveyard, I believe it can just pop a card we control. I might not be reading the card text exactly word for word, but it does offer some form of removal here as he's able to clear the Dryas, making our sowing a little less viable here. My next play is to special summon Princess to the board and then use the effect of Snowdrop in our hand to tribute off to try to summon it. And he does negate that with red, or rather the Djinn Buster, and I don't really have a play past that. I'm thinking, like, if there's any other way I could have possibly set up a way to make Princess a negate, but I really don't think there was. Maybe I could have special summoned the Princess, linked it into another Dryas, and activated Sowing before committing the Snowdrop to the board. I think that probably would have been a lot better, because maybe it forces out a Djinn Buster negate, maybe it forces out a red, but you know, we still have to deal with one or the other after the fact, and a set Smashers in the back line as well. So I decided to scoop it up there early, despite maybe making a subpar play, and I definitely did. I probably should have just committed the Princess to the field, made another Dryas, activate the Sowing, and just see where I can go. But I think can't really blame myself for doing what I did, realizing that it's probably an unwinnable situation, save some time, and just get right into game 2 where I can go first and try to set up my board. And that's exactly what we do here. All right, so here we are in game 2. Had to pause here a little bit further into the start of the game, but just so we can get a look at both of our hands. My opponent opened up Freezing Curses, Flashing Fire, and Destruction alongside Wind Up Kitten and Sprite Blue. So no hand traps, no interruptions for our first turn, but they do have quite a few going second cards, as well as some engines. Seeing a level 2 with blue always feels good, right? And especially since any of the runic spells can act as level 2 instant fusion is just good. We opened up a copy of Petal, Glamour, Double Mudon, and Rivalry of the Warlords. So pretty okay hand. I do normal the Petal and go ahead and search out a Princess with it. I took some time to try to figure out whether or not there was any way to turn this into a Seed combo, protected by at least one Princess negate to be able to trade with a hand trap, maybe like Droll or Ash Blossom, whatever it may be, or Nibiru, right? But I don't think there was a way necessarily. Now, I do typically, when I go first in games 2 or 3, I'm very wary of Evenly Matched. It's a very popular side deck card right now, and it's also an extremely effective side deck card against the Rikka deck, since the end board does not have any way to deal with a trap card like Evenly Matched. You don't set up any Omni negates. And side tangent here, I know some people think that the Therion package is good in this deck, and I could not disagree more. I have tested the Therion package several times in this deck, and the amount of restrictions that the Rikka engine sets up is just too much to try to fit in the Therion package. Yes, you can make it work. Some people have had it work for them. I personally am not a fan of the Therion package. I've tested enough to know that it is just not good in my personal opinion. I'm not trying to dissuade anybody from playing it. If you feel as though you have good success playing the Therion package, then by all means go ahead and play it. I just know from my personal experience, I do not like it whatsoever. I think the end boards are actually worse, and it makes the deck more prone to Dark Lure no more. And I think it's just a lot to ask just to set up an Omni negate when you could still just play around evenly games 2 and 3 via side deck cards like Polynosis, you know, Spiritual Water Art, Solemn Judgment, a Pointer of the Red Lotus, etc., or just building your board to not outright lose to evenly match at the end of the day. I know it could be easy to set up a Regulus, but there are a lot of hoops to jump through in the combo, and the way the deck has to be built and all of the engine requirements in there, I'm just not a fan of it when we already are having to deal with drawing twin enough. So side tangent, concluded there. I do not like the Therion package, and I will not be playing it at any point going forward unless, you know, things drastically change within the deck. So, like I said, getting back on track here, I don't think there was a way to do a protected seed combo here, so I kind of just have to play it as cautiously as I possibly can. I want to be able to set up Strenna with at least, you know, Con and Sheet available, as well as having Rivalry. And like I said earlier, we knew he was playing the Lava Golem. We don't have to worry about Lava Golem here, thankfully, because we can just have Rivalry set. So I do end on multiple bodies. I can just preemptively flip the Rivalry to turn off the Lava Golem. Obviously, we can only control plants, so he can't give us the Lava Golem, which I believe is a Fiend monster, if I recall correctly. So we're going to go ahead and use the Snowdrop here, tripping off the Mudon, bringing out itself and Princess. Snowdrop, target the Princess, make them both level 4, detach to add back the Glamour, and then we set Rivalry and Sheet. And this will, in most cases, just end up being enough. And the thing here, Rivalry carries a lot less weight against the Runic Sprite deck is because they have so many ways to remove it. They have Smashers, and they also have the Flashing Fire as well. As he activates, well, they have Destruction, which pops backward. But speaking of Flashing Fire, he's just going to use it immediately on the Strenna. And this is another example of why this matchup is so tough. He can just completely out 2 interruptions just like that, just by popping Strenna. That form of spot removal is just very, very strong against our deck, and there's really nothing I can do about that. Then he's going to go ahead and activate a Freezing Curses to go ahead and summon out the Hugins. That's going to go ahead and discard Kitten to be able to grab the Fountain, activate Fountain to get the Destruction, and that clears the Rivalry. And then he's able to draw 3, and again, nothing I can do there. If he would have hit the Field Spell, I think he would have maybe been in a better spot, but then again, he had to try to play through Rivalry, which I don't think he was doing. Normal summon Aperia, draw a card. Now right here, as you guys could probably tell, I took a bit of a Hail Mary play, which was to use Sheet after he normal summoned the Aperia to completely clear his board and put him on Have Starter. Now, that was a bit of a bold play considering he just drew 4 cards, 3 off Fountain, 1 off Hyperia, and I got very lucky that he did not draw a single copy of Sprite Starter. I wasn't thinking about it at the time, but watching this back, I kind of realized he could have used any Runic spell to bring out a Huggins to try to play from there, but he had also already exhausted all of his Runic spells at this point. He'd used Flashing Fire, Destruction, and Freezing Curses all throughout the course of his turn, so those are all completely turned off, and his draws were a bunch of extra Runic spells and a Cap Shell. So again, we got very lucky. I think that was the correct play, and couldn't let him get any further, if I'm being totally honest. I mean, I could have let him get to maybe an Elf Plate or a Gigantic, but I didn't want to risk him resolving Gigantic, because if Gigantic resolves, we don't get Petal in the end phase, and that's kind of a death sentence when we need as much momentum as we possibly can get. Luckily, it pays off, right? He passes, we get Petal in the end phase. We attempt to use Petal Effect, and I believe he uses a copy of Freezing Curses on that to negate the effect, which was fine by me. And he banishes the top 3. No sort of crucial engine pieces getting banished there, which was good to see. Now, with the way my opponent's board is set up, we could probably go for some sort of OTK line using like the seed stuff, but we do have to worry about Runic Fountain and a possible barrage of Runic spells kind of shutting that down. So I decide to take a bit of a, I don't know if I'd call this a safer play, but I go for a Strenna play because I'm trying to get access to Sheet and just try to play the Sheet grind game with Princess and Con and all this, try to keep him off of getting 2 level 2s on the field long enough to be able to do anything with. But I did have the opportunity to go for Searching Petal and Loci to try to go for an OTK, but I think both lines get punished by a copy of Flashing Fire. And, you know, I go ahead and search Primula Princess, go for Strenna. He pops it on summon with a Flashing Fire, which I was like, okay, fair enough. I guess I'll have to try again next turn, as I already another copy of Glamour in hand. He tries to draw off the Fountain. I ash it, keep him off drawing more cards, hope he doesn't draw, you know, like, good engine next turn. But you know, he does have still the Cap Shell and the blue. And I think he drew Nibiru for turn. which is not the best draw for him, but it's still good nonetheless. He special summons blue. We activate the effect, tribute it for cost to negate it with Princess. And then he sets a Smasher and passes turn. End phase. Petal comes back. And we have that Glamour in hand still. We still have Con up. And if we can use, Smashers, or not Smashers, the Glamour to clear the cap shell, it'll completely turn off the Smashers, which is great. And we search a copy of Princess, and we do cap shell. Tribute off, or Glamour, tribute off the cap shell, rather, my apologies. Search out the Petal and the Loci. And he gets to draw off of the cap shell, because if it's tributed, he gets to draw too. I didn't realize that at the time. And we normal summon the Loci, and here we go for the, all or nothing play here, which is going for the Seed OTK, and hope that he doesn't have any runic spells or any other non-monster form of interruption, because we already have a Princess set up to be able to negate a monster. And if he has Nibiru, we can stop it. And yeah, we just go for the OTK line here. And love doing this line. It's so satisfying. Just knowing that like Seed is OTK, or Seed with any level 4 is like uber OTK. Really good bit of knowledge to have in your back pocket when you're going into a tournament. It's something you definitely don't want to forget, because you can just take games out of nowhere, and that is exactly what we end up doing. Now, to quickly run through game 3 with you guys, my opponent obviously did decide to go first, and he opened up really, really strong. I did not open any hand traps. We did get into a bit of a back and forth grind game. Now, I know there can be a bit of a difference in how this is ruled. Our locals had ruled it that in order for you to successfully skip your next battle phase with the runic cards, you have to declare that you are skipping your battle phase, and if you did not do so, you would still not have a battle phase the next turn. My opponent didn't know that, and honestly, if the match wasn't being recorded on my GoPro, I wouldn't have brought it up, but like this was the last week, and I felt as though this match mattered, and I didn't want to let something like that slide. If my opponent didn't know it, then that's on him. And, that's how our locals ruled it. And this only came up once because he thought, by not going to his battle phase the previous turn, that he was good to have a battle phase the next turn. And when he went to do that, I said, you never skip your battle phase. So it basically bought me an extra turn. It ultimately didn't matter. Not seeing any form of board breakers or hand traps going into his combo made it very, very rough. I got by just barely by the skin of my teeth and was able to kind of stall a few turns, but he just had so much overwhelming advantage. I was never able to take a foothold in that game, and we ended up losing outright because of that. And it's really unfortunate, but, this is a very tough matchup, something that I think is going to need a lot more practice and a lot more preparation. And the hand trap lineup or the defensive card lineup is something that has to change going forward with this deck. Especially, going to the Ishizu format, etc., which we'll talk about briefly a little bit later on. The next rounds, though, we played against Marincess. We beat that. And then we played Cybertherion, and we beat that. We beat the Marincess 2-1 and Cybertherion 2. If you guys want to see those matchups, I'll leave a link to those up in the top right. And I was going to go over another match, but I do have a bit of a surprise match to go over that's not from this locals, but it is from an online cash tournament that I ended up playing in. So I'm very excited to go over that with you guys a little bit later on in the episode, and we can talk about a different matchup, a more sort of relevant matchup, the Bestial Tier matchup. Alright, so that officially wraps up our last Saturday locals for the series. I did mean to film an update while I was in there after round 2 or 3. I just didn't get the time to. Time kind of got away from me after, I think, rounds 1, 2, and 3. There was like a minute or so left on the clock, and one of my matches also like ended in time, so I just didn't have a lot of time to film. And the time that I did have, I had to use filming some B-roll because I hadn't filmed any up until that point. So we're just going to talk about some things briefly here. Round 1, we played against Sword Soul. Really wasn't expecting that. Kind of got blindsided by it a bit. That's one of those matchups where maybe I wish I had Nibiru in my main deck still, but I think he did a pretty good job of playing around it all but game like 3 when he went for a more greedy combo, or it might have been game 2. But we ended up winning that match. I don't think there's really anything too noteworthy to go over. Round 2, we played against Runic Sprite, and that match went the distance. There was a lot of cards in there that I just really wasn't expecting. Well, one in particular, it was a card called Soul Scissors, and it was kind of a spicy tech. But that card made it really hard to play, and just not seeing enough side deck cards or hand traps made it also really hard to play. I already have an idea of what I'd possibly change with this deck going forward, because the amount of times where like I'll go second and have a decent amount of side deck cards in or defensive cards, and I just don't end up drawing any, and I have to try to go into a board with no defensive cards or board breakers or hand traps. It just always feels bad. Luckily, he was playing the Runic variant, and he forgot to skip his battle phase, and we had extra turns. But it really didn't matter. He just had us dead to rights there later on, and I think we'll go over that match as much as I can. Might have to switch camera angles or just go over the first-person view, because my camera did die like 3/4 of the way through because I forgot to switch batteries. I put a fresh one in before we started. And then round 3, we played against Marincess. That was a interesting match. I was playing against my friend David Fields, aka the guy who looked like he was in the Secret Service the last episode. He actually just bought my English core off of me, Starlight's included, and really awesome to see him on the deck, and I may be returning to the deck too, so we can both be on it. That'll be pretty much a really fun experience to have somebody else on that deck. And then round 4, we played against a Cyber Therian deck, our boy Andy. That was a pretty straightforward match, honestly. Like, we didn't get to play against any of the decks that I was, like, really kind of hoping to play against. I really wish we would have played against, like, the tier deck, but we just didn't. And I think because of that, I really don't have a reason to go over any of the other matches, because they're not really, like, super relevant. I guess it depends on how long the episode is. If we have time, we can kind of squeeze one of the matchups in, maybe the Cyber Therion match or maybe the Sword Soul match. But yeah, we were able to go 3-1. I'm not sure what place we finished in. I'll probably put that up on the screen now. And what our total record was obviously 3-1. But we also have 2 OTS packs to open. Let's take a look at what we got here. Will we pull an ulti this entire series? Favorite reprints and a Pain Painter. Great super rare for the set. Really good meta call reprint there. And let's see if we get ourselves an ulti in the close. Ah, yes. Lava Battle Guard. Gotta love that. And a Kuwagata Alpha. And, ooh! Water Enchantress of the Temple ulti. Hell yeah! That's my second one. And you know what's funny? I actually sold a lot of my Adventure Engine, and I wanted to pick it up again just to be able to play in Marincess. And I wanted to get ulti Enchantress, and this is my second copy, so now I only need one more. That's actually really sick. Very, very nice thing to have in the close here. I don't know how well it's going to show up on camera in the low lighting in here, but yeah, we'll definitely take that. That's kind of a little positive note to end on. Unfortunately, we didn't go 4-0 at any point over the series. I've gone 4-0 with the deck in the past. Just couldn't do it over the span of weeks. It is what it is. We're going to go home. I'm going to eat some food. As per usual, always starving after these types of events. Very mentally taxing. It tends to make me very hungry. And then we'll probably do a bit of a reflection in a couple days from now and tell you guys what my deck list I think is going to look going forward. And you guys can expect to see a full-length deck profile on the channel at some point after that. And we'll be revealing what deck we'll be playing next for the series, and why also we won't be having One Deck 1 Month for quite some time, and kind of a little bit of a serious chat about the series as a whole a little bit towards the end. So we'll see you guys in a little bit. So this is the point in the episode where I was planning to film the wrap-up and ultimately the outro for the series, and that would have been the plan had I not made it this far and done this well in a recent online tournament that I entered in. it's been ongoing for about a month or so because you know how online tournaments go. People have to make arrangements to play each other, and not everybody can always play immediately, etc., etc. So the tournament finally wrapped. I was in the finals of a 16-man winner-takes-all double elimination cash tournament. First prize would get $320 cash, and everybody else would get nothing else. And here is that finals match, and I actually ended up winning the whole thing, going undefeated with Rikka Sanavalon. And it's a really amazing thing that happened, especially after the kind of dry streak we had over the month playing this deck at locals where we weren't able to get first. Getting first in an online cash tournament honestly feels a lot better because, you know, $320 cash is a lot better than 30 store credit ever would have been. Now, I wanted to make a separate video out of this. I really did, but this tournament started before Darkwing Blast released, but we were allowed to use Darkwing Blast cards, so we still have the Kashtira stuff and the Bestial stuff legal, right? We just don't have Magnificent Mavens here. And that's why I didn't want to make a separate video out of this, because as much as I would have loved to share this in its own video, you know, as great as that would have been, it's a completely new format now with YCS Pasadena having just wrapped up the other day to kind of date when I'm recording this. You know, it's unfortunate, right? The timing of it all. And I can't make a separate video out of it because of that reason, because this is technically old format, even though it's only been a matter of a couple weeks, right? But this is that finals replay, and I want to go ahead and share it with you guys. Now, I did play this person the round prior. I played them in the winner's bracket finals. They went on to win the loser's bracket finals, and I had to play them immediately soon after, I think 5 days later, and play them in the grand finals. They had to beat me twice in order to knock me out, and I only had to beat them one time, so I had a pretty big advantage going into this from that standpoint. So we're going to hop into this replay here. I do win die roll, which is always great to see, 46 versus 40. My opening hand was Concon, Lokai, Petal, Mudon, Ash, to their Serenir, Magnamut, Murley, Kashtira, Fenrir, and Branded Beast. So they opened pretty strong here. You know, Magnamut, Murley, Fenrir, pretty okay hand. It's not the greatest. I mean, we opened up pretty strong here, if I'm being honest. And you're going to see the play that I go for here. Obviously, we're going to go for Concon set first before we use Petal to play around Gamma. We're going to get Glamour right away to grab Princess, and then we're going to go ahead and grab a Snowdrop off the Petal once we have our Princess in hand. And then we're just going to go ahead and use Snowdrop to bring out Lokai and do the protected Sanavalon Seed combo. I like doing this because, you know, what better way to do Seed combo than to do it with having a live Princess in hand already. So we're going to search out Primula, tribute this off to go ahead and bring out Princess. And this is kind of a misplay here. I think maybe I did this because I wanted, like, multiple Princess in rotation. What I should have done here is summoned out the Mudon, Chainlink 1 Mudon, Chainlink 2 Primula. That's the whole reason I went for the Primula to begin with. The Mudon would grab us a copy of Sheet safely, and then the Snowdrop would modulate its level by targeting the Primula, making everything level 4. We'd overlay for a copy of Strenna, go for Bengalancer, and pretty much be done with our turn. This build I'm also playing was playing 2 Jasmine and 2 Strenna. So I wanted to make sure I wasn't blowing through all of my Strennas turn 1 in case the game happened to get into a grind. That's kind of one of the rules of thumb. So we go ahead and special summon the Primula there anyways, and then I bring out the Mudon. And I guess if I'm being totally honest, I kind of meant to do the full board with the Hyperiton, but I realized soon after that I used the Mudon there to tribute over the Dryas that I wasn't going to be able to tribute my Strenna this turn by any other means, so I just kind of had to roll with it. Detach to go ahead and add back the Mudon, link for Bengalancer, set the sheet, and pass turn. He starts with the Fenrir, which had me sweating a little bit, and then he top decks Pearl Rhino, which is a very, very strong top deck. I did think about ashing this, but I decided to let it go in hopes that maybe he'd go for like a Shiren play, because that's ultimately what I was holding the Ash for. And I think ashing Shiren nowadays is just 100% correct. Cannot let that resolve. So we ash the Shiren, he chains Fenrir, we use Princess to negate, tributing off the Strenna. Gets a little ahead of himself and brings out the Serenir by banishing our Jasmine, right? Which is whatever. But, you know, we still get our Hyperion out. I wasn't going to negate the Serenir effect in hand anyways. He then links for the Dark just to get the Serenir to the grave to trigger its effect. All that's fine and dandy. We don't have any Darks in our grave. He's going to activate Magnamut to banish the Serenir and get Magnamut effect. And then he's going to go for Sprine. Sprine's going to dump Merly. Merly effect, that I decide to negate. He normal summons Merly, which is a pretty strong normal summon, and ends up hitting Merly Sharon. Already used Merly to fusion, at least attempted to, but he does have Sharon available. That's going to allow him to go to Kit. Chainlink 1 Kit, Chainlink 2 Perla Rhino. He targets the field spell, so I am forced to then shotgun the Sheet, getting rid of the Kikalo, so he can't use the other effect to, you know, pop itself and summon another tier back and mill 5 and have more chances to play. So I wanted to make sure I used the Sheet there before I lost some potential value on it. He grabs another Shiren, and then, you know, he sets the Branded Beast, gets this end phase search of Druid Worm and passes turn. Accidentally grabbed Shiren when he meant to grab Havness. It was the finals of a $300 tournament, but I am kind and let him take it back to go ahead and search out Havness because I get it, right? These things happen. I wasn't gonna, you know, hold that against him. I thought about it, but I decided not to. Everybody gets one, right? Everybody gets one. So we draw our Imperm for turn, and Petal's coming back in the end phase, and he's going to start by activating Druid Worm, and he does this in M1, and he's going to go ahead and bring out Druid Worm by banishing another Druid Worm from grave, and then he activates Havness in response to the Petal, and then chains Branded Beast in response. Well, I chain Princess in response to the Havness because I wanted to negate that. He then chains the Branded Beast in response to the Princess. So Chainlink's got a little out of whack there. So that resolves, then he activates Branded Beast to get rid of the Hyperion, and then the Druid Worm is going to send the Bangalancer, and importantly, he has to send the Bangalancer because we have the Sowing engraved to protect it from destruction. I thought about chaining the Bangalancer there, but I figured if he's going to get rid of it, if I chain the effect of Bounce, I'm not going to get that body back on field because you can only use one of Bangalancer's effects per turn and only once that turn. So I figured I might as well just save the effect just so I can bring it out of the graveyard later on. And of course, remembering Petal that resolves there, we grab a copy of Princess. And we're going to special summon Princess, activate the effect of Mudan, tributing off the Princess. That's going to go ahead and search Con. We're going to activate the Con. Con's going to go ahead and get Sheet. We're going to activate Sheet, tributing the Sprine, searching out Princess, searching out Carrot Weight. And then we have not normal summon yet, so we'll normal summon Carrot, link it into Dryas, send off the Princess to bring back the Carrot Weight, and then link off the Dryas and the Carrot Weight into, well, the Mudan, rather, into Dance Peon. I think the reason why I linked off the Mudan here was because if the Dance Peon missed, I wanted to make sure I would be able to have a way to have more damage, I guess, but I think I might have momentarily forgotten about the Bangalancer from the grave that I could have brought back to get over the Merly anyways, so I think it would have been ultimately safer to leave the Mudan on field. In case it completely whiffed, I'd still have access to a Princess Negate in grave because I'd have a Rikka monster on field. So that was a slight mistake. Got a little greedy there, forgot about my Bangalancer, but this was kind of a Hail Mary play, nothing short of that. We go effect, call 3. Mill a Petal right off the rip, Duster, Bell. So happy to see a Petal. We bring that back, and then we're going to go ahead and use Dance Peon's effect to go ahead and target the Primula, make them both level 4s, overlay into Strenna, and then Strenna's going to go ahead and grab back Sheet because we're just playing the Sheet grind game right now. Bangalancer effect, we go ahead and banish 4 Link 1s out of the grave, and then go Battle Phase attack over the Merly, which, if I'm being totally honest again, I should have literally just left the Merly on the board. I don't think it was hurting anything leaving it there, and I also completely had a momentary lapse that he had a Fenrir in his hand still, and me clearing this little Merly on his board just gave him plenty of room to go ahead and summon it for free next turn. Especially since it meant, like, I wasn't going to be able to game him that turn anyways, right? I didn't really need to get over it. But now he's going to be able to apply extra pressure by having that Fenrir. He's going to use the Bestial Lubellion to go and grab Magnamut, special summon Fenrir. Fenrir effect to go ahead and search Fenrir. And then he is going to go ahead and activate Magnamut to banish the Lubellion. And then he activates Branded Beast, sending off the Magnamut to try and pop. And we chain the Imperm. And the Imperm goes in here because I think he targeted the set. The Imperm absolutely just goes in. Well, no, he didn't target this set. I just chained Imperm in response because it was in the same column so that we negate it. But that's a huge, huge, huge 2-for-1 trade right there. And then he's going to activate Shiren. That we frame 1 negate. No questions asked. Cannot let that resolve. He goes battle phase to attack over the dance peon. I'm like, fine, I'll just protect it with sewing. And end phase petal comes back. And that is the end of game 1 right there. Up 1-0. And into game 2 here, my opponent opened up King of the Swamp, Terraforming, Droll, and Lockbird. Tearlaments, Rhinoheart, and Branded in High Spirits to our Petal, Dark Ruler, Mudan, Unexpected Die, and Rikka Sheet. So I unfortunately did not open up any interruptions here. Just hoping I have a Dark Ruler and that it's going to be enough. And so we do have the Dark Ruler, which is good. And I know this deck can end on a board that's a little more susceptible to Dark Ruler, especially with Branded in High Spirits. And when he searched the crime, my heart kind of sank a little bit because I was like, okay, my out to this potential board is now technically no longer an out. And especially when I saw the Branded in High Spirits, I was like, he's definitely going to be going for probably a Baron board, maybe with access to roll Kalos or Baron and Kaleido Heart. But yeah, seeing the crime searched like that was just like super rough because now we have to deal with this board without Dark Ruler, possibly. And even if the Dark Ruler resolves, right, he still has crime to stop anything else, and that's triggering a tier name. And yeah, he's going to send Branded Regained off of the Albion, get back the Cartesia. He shouldn't get back the Branded High Spirits here, which I was quick to remind him that you can't use both effects in the same turn. So I start with the Dark Ruler, expecting it to get negated by the crime, and he actually doesn't negate it, so I was a little worried by that, because I was like, okay, now he has access to an Omni Negate still, which can dump a tier, and that's definitely problematic for the hand that we have, not having much in the form of extenders, right? So we go for our Dryas, activate the effect, go ahead and search Sewing, and then we activate the Sewing. Well, he first on Resolution, Droll Knockbirds me, which he did hit me with Droll the previous game that I played him in round 4, and he Drolled me in game 2 also. So a lot of deja vu here. So I knew that he had Droll in his deck. Really not much I could do here to play around it with the board that I had. I guess maybe I could have normaled the Petal, not use this effect, then Mudan just tribute it away, and then effect to search Con. And then once I get Con access, I can still get access to Sheet. Or, well, I mean, I already drew Sheet, so I guess that's not really that great of a play either. But then I use the Sewing, and he negates the Sewing with the crime, which is not only a fantastic point to negate. Sewing is an insane card, and so many people let it walk, but it's also now going to trigger the Shiren, and that is very, very problematic. So the Shiren's going to resolve, getting, the Kikalos back to the extra deck, going for Rokalos. He gets the Perla Rhino to pop the Dryas. We activate a second, unexpected die. He negates. He's going to be able to send off the Kaleido Heart effect to dump Merly. Fusion again, and he's going to go for the Dragos Stapelia. And if it were anything else, I think we would have been completely fine. I actually scratched that. Droll and Lockbird's in the equation. So my plan here is if he let this walk, I was going to send a copy of Princess to the graveyard because Petal doesn't just add Rikka monsters, it can also send them. So I would have sent a Princess and then maybe like linked into Dryas, set Sheets, and passed, or maybe just activate a Mudan tribute, set pass, have a 24 in defense, and hopefully Sheet can just delete one of his monsters. But I think we were in a losing situation there anyways, mainly because of the Droll and Lockbird, maybe not even so much the Dragos Stapelia there. The Droll really put the final nail in the coffin. So we go to game 3. Opening hands, my opponent has Merly, King of the Swamp, High Spirits, Rhinoheart, Sharon, to our Princess, Lokai, Snowdrop, DD Crow, Mudan. No hand traps on his side. We do open up one hand trap, which is great for going first, and of course for going second. We lead with Princess, and it was really an incredible hand here to start with. Princess, Snowdrop, Lokai. Seeing that one up right there was so incredibly clutch, and I think going forward, I'm definitely going to be playing 2 Snowdrop. Card's just too clutch to I think, not only play 1 copy of, in my opinion, and for other reasons I'll explain later. So we're just going to do Seed Combo here, and we are going to keep in mind trying to play around evenly matched as the main threat to our end board, especially since we didn't open up Solemn Judgment. We have to be super cautious. And my opponent also told me, all good earlier in the log, something, and okay, if he's got no hand traps, maybe he's got a lot of board breakers in hand, maybe evenly matches one of them. So we're just going to try to do our best to play around that, make sure we don't lose as much as possible. So we're going to add back the Snowdrop for that extra follow-up, make Bengal Lancer and pass. He draws Droll for his 6th card and leads Brandon in high spirits, pitching Shiren, or revealing Shiren and pitching the Rokalos. And luckily for me, this play is going to play super hard into the DD Crow. I could have let the Shiren resolve, and I could have crowed the Rokalos and put him on, have another tier in hand, but that is a very risky thing to do. So I just decided to play it safe and crow the Shiren. He normal summons Blazing Cartesia, activates effect, and, at this point, it's basically a polymerization, but the biggest fear in my head was, maybe if he has 2 tiers in hand, that's a lot of advantage being generated off of 1 card, so we're going to use our Princess to negate, tributing off the Strenna, new change Strenna effect. Again, he gets a little ahead of himself here, forgetting about the Strenna effect. Because, it does get effect when tributed. We're going to go ahead and bring out Hyperiton, and then he's going to go ahead and activate King of the Swamp. And my thought process here is okay, he just had to normal summon Cartesia, try to resolve, we negated it, and now he's going for King of the Swamp in hand effect. Not something you typically see. We haven't even seen a Shiren yet. No Perla Rhinos, all effects, which if he had them, I'm sure he would have used them by now. Now he's going King of the Swamp to grab Polymerization, and I know once he grabs Polymerization, if it goes through and he has 2 tier names, it's going to be very, very rough to try to recover from there. Bengal Lancer and Sheet may be enough just to get me by barely. I took a chance here that, if he has Havness, we're in a rough spot. And I took the chance, and it paid off. Fortunately, did not see any side deck cards in the opening 5. Droll was just literally 1 card late. And if he had Droll there, maybe would have made a difference. I had a play line that would have been able to play around Droll pretty easily. We had the Snowdrop and Princess set up frame 1, so we would have been able to stop a Droll and get to a very similar end board. But yeah, we win that. We end up getting first, going undefeated, and winning ourselves $320 at the end of it. Really ecstatic. This is the deck list that I used. This is, of course, pre-Magnificent Mavens. Really quickly, before I wrap this episode up, I want to talk to you guys about some ideas that I have to change this deck going forward. I was messing around with playing Marincess again in the new format, and upon playing Marincess against Ishizu tier, I noticed one thing. The mill 10 is great from Kelbeck and Keldo, I believe, or Agito, whichever one mills 5. That's great for them. Milling a lot of cards, fine. In a deck like Marincess, milling cards is not bad either. Hitting Enchantresses, Mandarins, etc., Pascalus with spells and traps, basically just free. The thing that I realized that was so powerful is the DD Crow 6 that the deck has access to through Medora and Keldo. That's just an insane interaction. And while this deck is a little bit more robust into those 2 cards, it definitely isn't immune. Hitting Twin, or not hitting Twin, but hitting Seed in the normal combo when Twin tries to revive it may not seem like a lot, but it does cut us off from a lot of things. It keeps us off that extra body, it keeps us off the life point gain, and it denies us 1 search, essentially making Jasmine just another way to get to Petal. And that's not that great, right? It can get us to Mudan 2, of course, but it's just... The Seed combo is a little bit more vulnerable to things like Medora and Keldo. And same thing with Petal, right? Petal is also very susceptible to these cards. Losing end phase add backs of Petal is very tough. Same thing if Medora Keldo hits Strenna. That's also extremely rough too, because we cannot tag into Hyperiton with any form of interruption on our opponent's turn. They deny the material, and Hyperiton comes out with no way to interact with our opponent. Very, very rough stuff. Hitting princesses out of the graveyard before we have a chance to resolve them, right? Deck definitely is not immune to Medora and Keldo, which I think is a big issue going forward. And some of the ideas that I had was just outright cutting Twin from the deck in general. I've played this deck a long time ago without Twin. You don't really need it. All you need is a way to get to Jasmine and a way to get any plant out of your deck. And I also thought about playing Tranquility in the main deck too, as this is a way to dodge DD Crow-like effects on our certain valuable monsters in our graveyard, mainly things like Princess, if I'm being totally honest. I know some people were attacking this to beat DD Crow many months ago, and this is something I might throw back into the main deck. And alongside that, you know, maybe if we're trimming down the Sun Avalon package, right, or trimming down our reliance on seeing it, maybe there's more room for playing a higher Rikka count. Definitely adding in possibly a second Snowdrop and cutting the carrot weight for a second Primula, mainly so we don't play into Bestials and we don't give them a good value target to be able to put back off of Medora and Keldo. That's just kind of my thought process. And it also would free up a slot in the extra deck if we weren't playing, you know, the Sunseed Twin and going for that whole line where we need to make another Dryas and the healer, right? Maybe we could cut one of them and free up a slot in the extra deck, which is great. I know some people have mentioned they would maybe go up to 3 seed and 2 sowing. So if they do get hit with a mill 10, right, you still have a good chance of keeping at least 1 seed and 1 sowing in the deck. So you have access to that line, and I still am a fan of that. Outside of that, though, I'm not entirely sure what else I would change. I did like playing the hand traps in this deck, especially Ash and Crow. Imperm was great. I think these 4 hand traps I might change to what I'm not exactly sure at the moment. Lone Fire is great. I think Lone Fire should pretty much always stay in so long as you play Dance Peon. The card's just too good not to play. But I think Twin can definitely get cut, possibly just for a 3rd seed. Squeeze a second sowing in there, maybe cut Harpy's Feather Duster since mine really isn't as popular as it used to be, and the deck can at least still out 1 mine on its own. So that's, you know, always a weight off my chest, not having to play a stupid main deck to mine out, especially when it's unsearchable. Nothing upsets me more than that. I don't know if you guys share that same sentiment. But yeah, those are my thoughts and ideas on this deck going forward into Magnificent Maven's format. I haven't had a chance to play against a Shizu tier, but I've played against the deck with another deck, Marincess, and, you know, Medora and Keldo are kind of crazy, right? And then those are my ideas and try to how to, like, beat that particular part of their deck, because everything else of tier really hasn't changed, right? We don't care about Bestial cards because we don't really ever summon Darks or Lights, at least the ones that we care about. Sure, they can banish a Jasmine, and they can banish our, you know, our Bengal Answer, but, you know, that's maybe, again, where cards like Tranquility come in very, very clutch, or maybe still playing cards like Bell in the main, right? So maybe just Valor and Mourner are going to get cut, and maybe the Harpy's Feather Duster in this. And maybe I trim down Princess to 2 as well. I'm not entirely sure yet. But yeah, that is all I wanted to say. I hope you guys enjoyed this final episode of One Deck, 1 Month, which will be the last episode for quite some time. We won't be picking this series up until after Photon Hypernova, and we will be playing, you probably guessed it, Photon Galaxy then. I'm going to take this time to experiment with some other decks, you know, kind of relax, take a little bit of a load off from filming this series, maybe try to figure out a way to rework it to help the series do better, because right now as it stands with all the work that's going into it, it really, at the end of the day, with how this series performs, it's kind of rough a little bit, you know, to see how much time and effort I put into these videos and to see them not do as well as I would like them to can be a little demoralizing, but, you know, we make do with what we have, right? So a little bit of a break from One Deck, 1 Month, but we'll be back stronger than ever. We'll try to rework the formula, maybe change the title, thumbnails, etc., and I'll see you guys on the other side. But until then, Winter Kills signing out, and we'll see you guys in the next one. And like always, a huge thank you goes to our Divine Level channel members who are Pony Star, Cadillacs84, Justino, and HH Cyber. Thank you guys so much as always for your very kind and extremely generous support of this channel.